Like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for daily stories of true love and growth. Share with anyone who loves emotional romance. The afternoon settled over Hope Springs, Texas, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The church bells rang, signaling the end of the town's annual festival mass, while families in their Sunday best filled the main square with laughter, music, and the mouth-watering aroma of fresh cornbread and fried pies. Emma Harper, in her hand-embroidered white dress, wandered alone toward the edge of the fair. Her heart raced, as if something or someone was calling her beyond the music and watchful eyes. Following her instinct, she left behind the stalls and glowing lanterns, taking a familiar dirt path she'd known since childhood, one that led to a forgotten field of wildflowers. There, among vibrant red poppies and golden sunflowers, stood a young man. With dark hair, sun-kissed skin, and striking green eyes. He knelt to pick up a fallen flower. When he looked up, their gazes locked. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. "You from around here?" he asked, his warm smile dismantling any walls Emma might have tried to build. "Yeah, I've lived in Hope Springs my whole life," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Caleb," he said, stepping closer, still holding the flower. "We just moved here. My family. We're the Walkers." Emma felt a shiver. The Walkers. She'd heard that name in hushed tones, in warnings she didn't fully understand. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Only Caleb mattered, and the way the breeze seemed to conspire in their favor, carrying the scent of wildflowers, wrapping them in a bubble where no one else existed. "I'm Emma," she said, accepting the flower Caleb offered. "Nice to meet you, Caleb Walker." They smiled. In that instant, beneath a sky ablaze with promise, something stronger than any warning or tradition was born, a love that knew no bounds. From that magical afternoon in the wildflower field, Emma and Caleb couldn't stay away from each other. Their meetings, at first chance encounters, soon became a necessity. A glance in church, a fleeting touch at the farmer's market, a note tucked into the folds of a handkerchief. Hope Springs, with its dusty streets and gossip floating like the scent of fresh pecan pie, was no safe haven for a forbidden love. But the young lovers found refuge in their secret spot, a clear creek hidden among weeping willows and fragrant brush. There, under the shelter of whispering branches, Emma and Caleb built their own little world. "I've never felt this way," Caleb murmured, gently holding Emma's small hands as the water flowed by their feet. "Like my heart doesn't belong to me anymore." "Me neither," she whispered, her eyes shining like stars. "With you, anything feels possible." Their bond grew, fueled by stolen glances, notes scented with honeysuckle, and promises whispered under the moon. But they weren't naive. Both knew their love was a spark that, if discovered, could ignite everything around them. The Walker and Harper families carried generations of silent grudges, rivalries born of land disputes, wounded pride, and failed romances. Still, fear didn't stop them. Because what is life, if not the chance to risk everything for what truly matters? As the church bells marked the passing of time, Caleb and Emma lived like thieves of moments, cherishing every laugh, every breath, as if tomorrow were an uncertain promise, one that soon enough was about to shatter. Summer in Hope Springs began to fade, along with the naive hope that nothing would change. One afternoon, as the sun dipped lazily behind the hills, Caleb arrived at the creek with a look Emma had never seen before. His face tense, his gaze distant. Emma's heart sank at the sight of him. "What's wrong?" she asked, dropping the daisy chain she'd been weaving. Caleb didn't answer right away. He sat beside her, pulling a crumpled paper from his pocket. It was a letter written in his father's bold hand, an order disguised as an opportunity. "We're leaving," he muttered, his voice breaking. "My dad got a job in Dallas. We're gone in 2 weeks." Emma blinked, refusing to grasp it at first. 2 weeks, 14 days, 14 sunrises without him, 14 nights in an empty world. "No," she whispered, pressing a hand to her mouth as if she could hold back the pain flooding her. Caleb cupped her face, pulling her close with desperation. "I'll come back, Em," he vowed, his forehead pressed against hers. "No matter how long it takes, no matter what we face, I won't give up." The creek kept flowing, indifferent to their heartbreak. The willows swayed, as if singing a farewell neither wanted to hear. Emma closed her eyes, letting tears mingle with words she didn't know how to say. because deep down they both knew a truth they dared not voice. Sometimes, even when two souls are meant to be, life conspires to tear them apart, and time, relentless, had already begun its countdown. After that painful afternoon by the creek, Emma's sorrow became impossible to hide. Her laughter, once light as a sparrow's song, grew rare. Her steps, once lively, now dragged like stones. Margaret, her mother, noticed the change quickly. In Hope Springs, where secrets didn't survive a single sunrise, whispers were already spreading. The Harper girl's been seen with a Walker. What a disgrace for such a respected family. One evening, after church, Margaret slammed the house doors shut, confronting Emma with the sternness of someone convinced they were saving their child from ruin. "You think I don't know what you're up to?" she shouted, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "A Walker! That family's brought nothing but trouble to our name." Emma, her heart torn, could barely respond. "Mum, it's not what you think. Caleb's different." "Don't talk to me about different, Emma," Margaret snapped, pulling a photo from her purse and thrusting it forward. A young man in a crisp suit with an empty smile. "This is your fiancé. The engagement will be announced this week." Emma felt the ground give way beneath her. The man in the photo was Nathan Cole, a distant cousin of Caleb's, a man who, despite his polished appearance, hid an ambition as cold as steel. "You have no choice," Margaret declared, like a judge passing a final sentence. "It's for the honor of our family." That night in her room, Emma cried until her tears ran dry, clutching the one note from Caleb she kept hidden under her pillow. Meanwhile, somewhere in Hope Springs, the church bells tolled faintly, as if foretelling the storm that was coming. A storm no love could ignore. The days that followed were torture for Emma. Under her mother's strict watch, every step, every glance, every breath was monitored. But fate, ever the ally of lovers, granted them one last chance. The night before her engagement to Nathan was to be announced, Emma slipped away. Heart-pounding, she darted through the sleeping streets to the creek where Caleb waited, as if he'd felt her call. When their eyes met, all their pent-up sorrow broke in a single moment. "Em," Caleb whispered, rushing to her and pulling her into his arms. "They're trying to tear us apart," she sobbed, clinging to his chest. "My mom, she's engaged me to someone else." Caleb closed his eyes, as if the pain could rip his soul apart. But when he spoke, his voice was steady, filled with desperate tenderness. "They can say or do whatever they want," he promised, brushing her face with trembling hands. "I'll wait for you, even if it takes my whole life. My love for you won't fade, Em. Never." Emma, choking on tears, pulled a small red ribbon from her pocket, one she'd secretly embroidered with their initials. She tied it carefully around Caleb's wrist. "This ribbon is my promise," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "No matter where you are, no matter how much time passes, my heart will always be yours." They kissed under the pale moonlight, a kiss filled with love, fear, and hope. It was a wordless goodbye, a promise whispered to the wind. The creek flowed on, a silent witness to a vow that neither time nor distance could erase. But deep down, both knew the path ahead would be far darker than they could ever imagine. Only a few days had passed since that night by the creek, but in Hope Springs, fate was already weaving its traps. The letters Caleb sent through Father James began vanishing mysteriously. Emma, desperate for word from him, feared he'd forgotten her. She didn't know someone else was pulling strings from the shadows, that someone was Nathan Cole. Caleb's cousin, aware of their romance, began sowing doubt in the town. He visited the Harpers with gifts, promises of prosperous deals, and whispered to Margaret, "Emma needs a real man, ma'am, not a dreamer with no future like Caleb." Meanwhile, in the town's saloons, Nathan spread his poison. Caleb Walker, that boy left chasing dreams, and it seems he's already found someone better in the city. The rumors spread like wildfire. Emma, drowning in a sea of gossip, began to waver, not in her love, but in her strength to withstand so much pressure. One afternoon, when the engagement announcement was posted at the church, Caleb found out. His latest letter, begging Emma to run away with him, had never reached her. Father James, realizing the betrayal, confronted Nathan in private, but the young man only smirked coldly. "Everything's in place, Father," Nathan said with a chill that froze the blood. "Emma will be mine, whether she likes it or not." Meanwhile, Emma, increasingly cornered, began to wonder if there was any hope for her love, or if she'd have to make the most dangerous decision of her life. The news of Emma's engagement to Nathan Cole echoed through Hope Springs. The town square, the shops, Even the church seemed to whisper about the fate imposed on her, but in Emma's heart, rebellion burned brighter than ever. One afternoon, locked in her room as her family rushed to prepare for the engagement, Emma received an unexpected visitor, Father James. With a grave expression and hushed voice, he confessed what she'd dreaded. "Child, Caleb never stopped reaching out to you. The letters were intercepted, and I suspect Nathan had a hand in it." Emma's world shook. The betrayal was deeper than she'd imagined. "So, Caleb? He still—" Her voice broke off. "He loves you," Father James said with unwavering certainty. "But if you want to fight for that love, you need to decide now. Not tomorrow, not later." Determination flared in Emma's eyes. That night, in the darkness of her room, Emma scribbled a hurried note to Caleb. In it, she begged him to meet her at their secret spot by the creek on the eve of the engagement. She was ready to risk everything. Her home, her name, her place in society. Nothing mattered if she couldn't share her life with the man she loved. Hiding the note in the folds of a Virgin Mary statue in the church, the only place she knew Father James could deliver it unseen, Emma took the first step toward her destiny. Meanwhile, far away, Caleb, who'd never lost hope, felt a stirring in his chest, as if he knew life was about to change forever. Night had fallen over Hope Springs, heavy and ominous like a warning. The church candles flickered in the distance, and the sound of crickets accompanied Emma's quiet steps as she ran toward the wildflower field, where it all began. Her heart pounded wildly. Caleb would arrive any moment. Freedom was so close she could taste it, but as she reached the edge of the field, a figure blocked her path. Margaret. Dressed in black, like a shadow from her worst nightmares, her mother stared at her with a mix of fury and pain. "Is this how you repay me, Emma?" she said, her voice sharp as a whip. "Running off like some nobody?" Emma froze, trembling, but she didn't back down. She'd made her choice. "Mom, I'm not your prisoner," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clogging her throat. "I can't marry someone I don't love." Margaret stepped closer, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "You know nothing about life, you foolish girl," she shouted. "Love doesn't put food on the table. Love doesn't protect you when trouble comes." Emma felt something inside her break, and something new take root, a strength she'd never known. "I'd rather be poor and free," she declared, her soul laid bare, "than rich and chained to a man I despise." For a moment, mother and daughter locked eyes in a silent battle, 2 generations clashing not just over a forbidden love, but over the right to choose their own path. Then behind her, the sound of hoofbeats shattered the tension. Caleb appeared astride a horse, his silhouette outlined against the full moon, like a hero from old tales. "Em!" he called, reaching out his hand. "Come with me, my love." Without a second glance, Emma ran to him. Margaret let out a sob that faded into the wind, watching as her daughter rode off into the unknown, taking with her something she could never reclaim, her innocence and her freedom. The gallop of Caleb's horse echoed in Emma's heart as they rode together, leaving behind Hope Springs' glowing lights, the malicious whispers, and the invisible chains that had bound her. The wind stung their faces, the open plains seemed endless, and for the first time in ages, Emma felt she could breathe, but it wouldn't be so simple. Halfway to the old train depot, a group of men sent by Nathan appeared on the road, armed with lanterns and angry shouts. "Stop! In the name of the Cole family!" Caleb gritted his teeth, knowing they couldn't face them directly. He yanked the reins, veering into a barely visible trail through the brush. "Hold on tight, Em!" he shouted. She obeyed, closing her eyes as she felt the wild rhythm of the horse and her own heartbeat merging into one. The terrain was treacherous, but Caleb's skill shone through. They crossed a shallow stream, plunged into a thick grove, and after what felt like forever, finally shook off their pursuers. They reached the depot just as the night train approached, its whistle piercing the early morning stillness. Caleb dismounted in a flash, helping her down. "You okay?" he asked, brushing her cheek, searching her eyes for any trace of doubt. Panting but resolute, she nodded. "With you, I'll always be okay." They boarded the nearly empty train car, blending in with laborers and merchants who barely glanced their way. As the train pulled away, carrying them far from Hope Springs, Emma leaned against Caleb's shoulder, letting tears fall freely. Not from sadness, but from profound relief. The promise of a new beginning loomed before them. An uncertain future, yes, but theirs. And as the train vanished into the vastness, two young souls sealed their fate with a quiet, filled with love and courage. The years passed like a whisper, but quickly, but they couldn't erase the scars of what Caleb and Emma had left behind, nor could they dim the flame of their love. They settled in a small town near Fort Worth, where the names Harper and Walker meant nothing to anyone. There, with hard work and unwavering love, they built a simple but fulfilling life. Caleb opened a woodworking shop, while Emma, with her skilled hands, wove quilts sold at local markets. They had 3 children, Jacob and Sophie, who grew up free, unburdened by the prejudices their parents had faced. Despite their happiness, a part of Emma never forgot her roots, and one day, after much reflection, she decided it was time to return, not for approval or forgiveness, but to show that their love, once deemed impossible, had prevailed. Their return was quiet, no fanfare, no scandals, just a family, hand in hand, walking the same dusty streets where they'd been condemned for loving. At first, some townsfolk in Hope Springs eyed them warily, as if they were ghosts from a past best forgotten. But over time, seeing Caleb's integrity, Emma's kindness, and their children's joy, the whispers died down. Margaret, now aged and frail, stood at her doorstep, watching her daughter from afar. For a moment her eyes filled with tears, not of anger or shame, but of something far more painful, the realization she'd lost her daughter not to rebellion, but to love. There were no grand reunions or tearful promises, just a slight nod from Margaret to Emma. A small gesture, but enough for Emma to know she'd been forgiven in some way. That night, under the same starry sky that had witnessed their love's beginning, they embraced by the creek, now still as the breeze rustled the wildflowers that grew stubborn and beautiful, like their love. Because some roots run so deep, no time, distance, or pain can uproot them. And their story, which began as a forbidden whisper, became a legend of eternal love in Hope Springs. Thank you for watching Bloom Between Us. If you enjoyed this emotional love story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for daily heartfelt romance and inspiring stories. Share with friends who believe in true love and second chances. Your support helps us keep bringing beautiful tales of connection and growth.